May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be always acceptable to you, O God, our Redeemer and Advocate. Amen. Good morning, St. Paul's. Good morning. What a joy to be back with you all. The theme of my sermon today is proclaiming the gospel. Let's see how well I do. O Lord, you are my God. I will exalt you. I will praise your name. Very simple phrase, and yet a very powerful sentence. It comes from today's passage from Isaiah. It is the essence of our faith, why we are gathered here today. It is essential to our well-being and determines how we see and move within the world. And if you are like me, when you hear it, it sounds like good church gobbledygook. It's easy to go right by it. In the midst of the world we find ourselves living in, let's pause and immerse ourselves in this phrase. Doing so may help us find a pathway toward our own lives. We live in a world where proclaiming good news is not the order of the day. There is the ongoing war in Europe, the emerging and unimaginable atrocities in the Middle East, the lack of government at our capital, and so much more. There is a shroud of negativity across our society that is beguiling and attractive to many of us. We witness it every day as people, perhaps even ourselves, are so easily drawn to complaining and pointing out what is wrong with others, with systems, and even with ourselves. Here's an example. It's really rather silly and trivial, except that I think it captures what I'm holding up in our tendencies. I'm going to be bold here right now and admit I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. And last week, the Steelers did what they were supposed to do. They won. But if you followed all the various sports shows and chats and newspapers in the subsequent week, all that we did, which I include myself, was complain about the punt returner, the third string defensive person, on we complained. And finally, somebody toward the end of the week said, you know, we won. Can we celebrate that? We did what we were supposed to do. No. And off we were off complaining again. How true perhaps that is in so much of our lives, drawn toward the negativity. We are a people of faith. We are a people of hope. We are of the resurrection. This is our starting point. O Lord, you are my God. I will exalt you. I will praise your name. Cuts through the disembodying and hopeless shroud and offers us a different way of being. It is a way that acknowledges the realities about us, but offers hope and energy. With an intention of directing us into this pathway of hope, allow me to explore this statement from Isaiah and weave some of my experiences with rural and migrant ministry into some thoughts. Let's begin with the first part. O Lord, you are my God. When we are saying this, we are saying that God is love. To say, O Lord, you are my God, is to say, God, I believe in love. Love is what we acknowledge, what we buy into, what we are saying has power. This is what we are rooting ourselves in, our starting, our middle, our ending point. Because we believe, and our foreparents have repeatedly shown us, that it is true. Love is positive. Love is hopeful. Love is real. So when we face the negativity, the fear, and the hurt, we are facing it with love. This is our hymn, our prayer, our song. We may waver, we may doubt, but we hold tight. And we hold together with others who believe the same thing. We have signed up for the team. And this is why St. Paul's is so important and so essential. We are amidst those who agree that love is what God is all about. It's not easy, is it? This summer, many refugees, asylum seekers arrived in New York City. And in turn, they arrived upstate. And RMM worked hard to welcome them. And one of the first moments we were invited to a couple of motels to welcome people who had traveled hundreds upon hundreds of miles from all sorts of circumstances, from all sorts of countries such as Georgia and North Africa and countries in Central America. And these folks, fleeing so many different situations, found themselves in this motel surrounded by protesters. Surrounded by people who were screaming into the motel. You aren't wanted here. You are evil. There was even one woman who said to me that she was not sending her daughter to school for a while because the evil refugees may end up in the school. In the midst of that, our youth group called Joy, Justice Organization of Youth, which is made up of high school students throughout Wayne County, said, this isn't what we're about. We're about love. And their leader, Wilmer, said, well, what are you going to do about it? And they discovered that the Wayne County government was having a hearing in which they were going to vote on declaring emergency status so that they could keep out all of the refugees and asylum seekers from Wayne County. And so our young people went and they invited others to join them, and they went to this hearing, and before it could start, one of the young people got up and said, excuse me, before we begin, can you tell us what is the emergency? And there was silence. And one official said, and the young person looked at him and said, there is no emergency. We are surrounded by loving congregations and organizations that know how to welcome people into our community. Let's give it a chance. And others stood up and spoke also, and finally they took the vote and voted not to declare an emergency. I'm having trouble with papers here. Well, there we go. The spirit. To not, that's all right, I don't need it. It's gone. They voted not only to not declare an emergency, they also voted to welcome these brothers and sisters. Love knows in its humility that there is much more that the other offers. Love cries in anguish at the violence and the harm because we feel the pain of humanity being denied. And love reaches out. I will exalt you. I will own the love in the midst of these realities. Prayer, worship, and action, reconnecting, re-reminding correcting the course, rooting ourselves. The Bishop of New York a number of years ago called together all the clergy for a clergy day in the diocese. And he said, I want to talk about the practice of love. And then he spent the whole time not talking about love, but talking about practice. He said, think about it. If you're on the volleyball team, you go to practice to build up your muscle memory, to build up your knowledge, to build up your skill. You practice the piano. You practice choir. I'm assuming you're all here at some other point during the week. We practice because we want to live into what we seek to achieve. Practicing love is not something that just happens, especially when you have so much against you, when we have a society that's not necessarily into love, it seems at times. The efforts of Joy showed that practicing of love. Teenagers. I will exalt you. Practice leads to the ability to better exalt. Rural Migrant Ministry has run an overnight camp for 40-some years for children from farm-working families and immigrants across the state. And this summer, we welcomed them back, 100-some people, and we had a staff made up of many former campers, and we were silly, and we were fun, and we were joyous. And in the midst of that, a young woman came up to us, and she said, I'm not sure I want to be here. And we talked further with her. Her parents were there with her. And it turned out that they had just escaped 3 years of human trafficking. And she didn't know what to do. We invited her in. She made it through the week of camp. She was always laughing and singing and what have you. And I thought, And then in the last day of camp, we had 2 of the cutest 9-year-olds come up to us, and they were in tears. And they didn't want to go home because they didn't feel that it was safe to go home. Camp was safe. And we thought, that's wonderful. We've created, through this practice, a safe space. And then one of them said, we don't want to go home because there has been a hit order put out on our family. And the other one talked about watching her uncle be assassinated in front of their eyes. Love takes place most pointedly in the face of adversity, in the face of atrocity, in the face of anger and evil. And humanity depends upon us joining together as a congregation of the faithful to stand and proclaim, I will praise your name. I will exalt you. I will live in love. And I will build up this environment, this community of love. I will not give in to the evil. I will be a beacon of your love by proclaiming it and living it in the dailiness of my life. St. Paul's took a bold step. I think it was a bold step, an unusual step, a number of years ago when you stood with Rural and Migrant Ministry and gave us a wonderful amount of money to start our Rural Academy of the People. And that Rural Academy, which is a mixture of classes and workshops and trainings and gathering of people, has gone on, and we have welcomed the refugees, and we have welcomed immigrants and farm workers and good old church folk to this academy. And as a result of this academy, I am pleased to tell you that today a group of immigrant farm worker women have created their own cooperative, a catering cooperative that is building on their ability to cook and nourish others and feed others and giving them income that they can offer something back to their families and their communities. And one of the founders of that cooking cooperative just traveled down to Washington, D.C. to watch her son enter as a freshman into American University on a full scholarship. In turn, that Rural Academy of the People has enabled us to create a federal credit union that is now providing access to resources to the people I've been talking about this morning. And that credit union, along with those cooperatives, has attracted the attention of President Bill Clinton, who has reached out and asked to partner with Rural and Migrant Ministry in order to create an avenue of hope for rural immigrants and refugees in the United States. St. Paul's planted the seed for that. St. Paul's, in your love of breaking out of the ordinary, has made that happen. So thank you so much. But the journey continues. The journey continues. So I'll finish by reminding us about the continuing journey as we turn back to Paul's letter from the Philippians. Finally, beloved, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is pleasing, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence and if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. Keep on doing the things that you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, and the God of peace will be with you. Amen.